Okay, good morning everybody, and wishing everyone a Shabbat Shalom on this beautiful Friday morning. Perashat Pinhas. Our Perashah, a lot of amazing points, but I would like to share with you a beautiful thought from something towards the end of the Perashah. Moshe Rabbeinu, who is told in this week's Perashah to go up to the Har HaAvarim, to the mountain where he's going to expire. Okay, he's going to pass away on this mountain. And he says, God, no problem. If I go, that's fine. If that's what you want, if that's what you decree, I will die. I just have a request. Please appoint a proper leader for the people. Don't let them be like a sheep without a shepherd. Okay? They need somebody. They need someone to guide them. They need someone that's going to love them. And God says, no problem. Who is the next leader after you? Who's going to appoint after Moshe Rabbeinu? We all know the answer. Yehoshua bin Nun. Kach lecha et Yehoshua. He was his student. Moshe had many students. But of all of the students, he didn't even pick his own son. God told him, take Yehoshua bin Nun, v'natata mehodecha alav. The pasuk reads in chapter 27, verse 20, our Perashah, you shall place of your honor upon him, and everybody will listen to him. He will serve the people in front of Elazar, etc., etc., etc. And our rabbis, in the Gemara, Masechet Baba Batra, page Ayin Hey, 75, that rabbis have something fantastic to say. That Moshe placed part of his honor, the pasuk says, and it stresses, of his honor, meaning, not all of his honor did Moshe give to Yehoshua. In a way, Moshe was much greater than Yehoshua. This is the famous idea of Yeridat HaDorot, that the generations declined. And in the Gemara's words, Penei Moshe kipnei Hama. The elders looked at Moshe, they looked at Yehoshua, they said it's not the same. There's a huge decline that we see here. The face of Moses is like the face of the sun. His appearance, his countenance, he had a shine of a sun. The Pnei Yehoshua kipnei Levana. But the face, the facial expressions, the features of Joshua were kipnei Levana, were like that of the moon. Moses is like the sun. Yehoshua is like the moon. What a difference. And the Zekenim, the elders, they concluded with the famous line, Oy la le'ota busha. Woe to that shame. Oy la le'ota kelima. Woe to that embarrassment. Or maybe more correctly, woe to that embarrassment. Woe to that shame. So this is something very interesting that our rabbis in the Gemara are trying to tell us. That Moshe's face was like the moon. Yehoshua's face, Moshe was like the sun. Yehoshua was like the moon. That's fine. I understand that. Moshe was greater. But what is the next line? Oy la le'ota busha. Woe to the embarrassment. Embarrassment of who? What's embarrassing over here? It's a beautiful thing. You got a new leader. Where's the shame? Who's the one that should be embarrassed? So I'd like to share with you three thoughts. Number one, the Chafetz Chaim, he explained as follows. What is the difference between busha and kelima? The famous rule in Hebrew, there's no such thing as synonyms. Okay, so if the elders are saying woe to the shame and woe to embarrassment, what's the difference between embarrassment and shame? Busha and kelima. And the difference, says the Chafetz Chaim, one of them is a positive and one of them is negative. Busha is to be embarrassed, but for a good reason. It's a good thing. Okay, as an example, our rabbis say that the Jewish people are baishanim. We are bashful. We are rahmanim. We are merciful. We are gomlech asadim. We are giving. We are charitable. We are caring people. So the Jewish people, to be baishan is actually laudable. It's praiseworthy. It's commendable. It's something that we should be proud of, to be baishanim. To be embarrassed. What does that mean, to be baishan? To be embarrassed for what? Usually I'm embarrassed if I did something bad. But over here, sometimes you didn't do anything wrong, but you're embarrassed because you're in the presence of something much greater than you. You ever go to sit in front of a big rabbi? All of a sudden, we're very humbled. If we sit in the presence of a great person, we're humbled. Right? It's the opposite of chutzpah. Chutzpah is someone who is audacious, bold. Right? Someone disrespectful. Right? But someone that's baishan, you have respect for your elders. You have respect for greatness, for people around you. So to be baishan is a good thing. But then there's kelima. Kelima is to be embarrassed because you did something wrong. Our hands are dirty. We were caught red-handed. We said something that we shouldn't have. It slipped. Or I was caught texting, acting, saying, doing. Now there's embarrassment because I'm guilty. I'm guilty of something that's no good. That is kelima. As an example, when God says to Moshe about Miriam, when she spoke lashon hara, halo tikalem. Tikalem is kelima. So there's two types of embarrassments. There's a busha, that's a good thing. You didn't do anything wrong. But you should still be a little bit respectful, embarrassed, humble. And then there's kelima. And kelima is because I'm guilty of something that I did wrong. The Jewish people looked at Moshe, they looked at Yehoshua, and you know what their response was? Oy la leota busha. Woe to the embarrassment, and woe to the shame. When you looked at Moshe, you saw greatness, but you didn't feel bad that you weren't like him. Moshe was a league of his own. Moshe was a giant. Moshe was born already circumcised. Moshe was born with light all around the house. Nobody said, wow, Moshe, why him, not me? You understood. Moshe was a different level, different caliber. Nothing to be embarrassed or ashamed about. The embarrassment is because we're in the presence of someone great and awesome. So I'm happy to be here. I'm respectful of this awesome person that I'm in front of. When they saw Moshe, his face was like the sun, kipnei hama. They felt busha, but a positive type of busha, a positive embarrassment. But then they looked at Yehoshua. Yehoshua was their peer. Yehoshua was one of their own. We grew up with him. We went to school together. We played football together on Sundays. Yehoshua was like the moon. How did he become great? He wasn't born great. He wasn't like Moshe. Even Moshe, of course, had to work on himself. But Yehoshua was an average guy, regular guy. And his greatness was because he studied. Like the moon. How does the moon get light? The moon gets its light from the sun. It doesn't have its own light. But it sits there and it receives and it reflects this light that the sun gives it. Yehoshua was a strong student. He applied himself till he became like the moon, receiving everything that the sun, that Moshe Rabbeinu would give to him. And he would listen and he would accept. And this was the greatness of Yehoshua. He wasn't born into it. He didn't have it originally. He was a regular average Joe, average Joshua, average Joshua. But he worked on himself. And when the elders saw him, you know what they said? Wow, that could have been us. That could have been us. Moshe, we're not embarrassed about. That wasn't us. We didn't have that in us. But Yehoshua, we could have been him. He didn't have an edge. He wasn't anything more special. He didn't have better tutor. He didn't have better school. He wasn't born in Bnei Brak. We were born in the same community. How did he turn out so honest? How did he turn out so respectful? How did he turn out so great? When they saw Moshe, they weren't so much ashamed. When they saw Yehoshua, oy leota kelima, wow. Shame on us that we didn't reach this level. We were all equal, but somehow Yehoshua became more equal. Yehoshua became greater. And when the elders saw him, he reached such levels, they felt a shortcoming within themselves that could have been us. So that's the dual language. Oy leota busha, oy leota kelima. Busha, when we looked at Moses, we're not embarrassed, so to speak. We're just more in awe. And then kelima is woe to the shame because we didn't live up even to Yehoshua level. Rav Yitzchak Zalman Meltzer gives a second idea over here, second approach. And it goes back to the famous rule of Yeridat HaDorot. And I want you to hear this idea. Yeridat HaDorot means there is something called a generation drop. In every generation, the level of greatness drops, of spirituality drops. You just compare the first two leaders, Moshe and Yehoshua. Moshe was the sun, Yehoshua was the moon. Think about our times. We have great rabbis, God bless them. But they pale compared to Hacham Ovadia, to the previous generation, Rav Moshe Feinstein. Rabbi Bernstein says he was once at a table of a student of Rav Moshe Feinstein. And of course, the student, big rabbi in himself, He was talking about Rav Moshe Feinstein, and he was saying about beautiful stories about him. And finally, one of the guests there at the table, he said, we don't have leaders like Rav Moshe anymore. And the student laughed and he said, let me tell you something. Even in Rav Moshe's time, we said the same thing. We said we don't have leaders like the Chafetz Chaim anymore. And make no mistake, in the Chafetz Chaim's time, they said, we don't have leaders like Rav Akiva Eiger anymore. And in his generation, we don't have people like Shulchan Aruch, and we don't have like the Rambam, and we don't have like Abaye and Rabbah. You could always go back. I guarantee you, in 100 years, they're going to look back at us. And they're going to say, wow, where were all these pillars of the community? Where are they now? All the philanthropists, all the tzaddikim. We don't have such people, such straight people, such honest people, people with respect, integrity, etc. The same way we talk about them, they're going to talk about us. And a lot of times, by the way, it's a yetzer hara, it's an evil inclination to say things like, we don't have big rabbis today. It's counterproductive. You're not doing anybody a favor by saying that. That's yetzer hara. He's just trying to get you to not give any respect to the leaders of your time so that you don't actualize your potential. That's a way of forfeiting. That's a way of waving the white flag. I don't have it. We don't have those rabbis. I guess we must surrender. I guess nothing great will ever become out of us. That's yetzer hara. Don't listen to that voice. Go to the leader of your generation. Asher yihiyeh b'yamim hahem, the pasuk says. Go to the leader, whoever it is. Yiftach kedoro k'Shmuel bedoro. Yiftach in his generation was equal to Shmuel in his. But even more, the reason the leaders aren't so great today is because the people aren't so great today. The leader is only able to reach so high depending on where the generation allows him to. I'll give you a simple example. Moshe Rabbeinu, the greatest ever, right? Was he always on the same level of greatness? 100% not. The second the people did Chet HaEgel, for 39 years, from the first year in the desert when they did Chet HaEgel till the last year, the level of Moshe's nevuah dropped. I don't know if you knew that. Moshe's level of prophecy was not always the same because it could only go as high as the people allow it to. If the people are here, then the Navi, the leader, could be here. If the people drop, the leader must drop with them. And what does God tell Moshe after the Chet HaEgel? He says to him, Lech red, go down. Not just physically. Because if you're on the top of a mountain, all you need to say is Lech, go. And it's understood you're going to go down. There's nowhere else to go from the top of the mountain. You can only go one way, that one direction, one-way street. It's down. Okay, unless you could fly. Unless you're David Blaine, then you walk up. But otherwise, you walk down. So what does God mean when he says Lech red? Go down. The answer is, God was saying not only go down physically, but you must drop now on a spiritual level. Your level of nevuah is going to decrease because the people's level decreases. So if we look around and we say we don't have rabbis like we used to, the answer is because we don't have people like we used to. The leader could only be as great as the generation allows him to be. And so when the people saw Yehoshua and they saw Moshe is the sun, Yehoshua is the moon, nowhere near as great, they realized if Yehoshua fell, it must be a reflection on us, on the people. The previous generation, they had giants. The previous generation, they had great people, and therefore they were zocheh, they merited a great leader like Moses. Our generation, we dropped. This is who we're stuck with, so to speak. This is all we have. This is what we deserve. We deserve only a Joshua because we're nowhere near as great as the previous generation. So when they said, woe to the shame, woe to the embarrassment, you know who they were talking to? About themselves. Shame on us that we fell so much, and therefore Yehoshua is what we're stuck with. Finally, the third idea I would like to share with you today is that of the Hidah. And the Hidah says, we think about who's going to be the leader after Moshe. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol niyeh baro. Why should Yehoshua be picked? What did he do that was so great? Was he the smartest guy? Was there anything specific about Yehoshua that he merited to be the leader? The answer is yes. Our rabbis say, Lo yamish mitoch ha'ohel. Yehoshua, you know what he did to deserve to become the next leader of the Jewish people? He set up all the benches, all the chairs. Every single morning he would come in, he would put away the books from last night, he would set up the chairs, he would set up the table, set up the Gemara, set up the learning, set up the Zoom, he would set it all up. And because of that, he was picked to be the next leader. And if we were to ask ourselves, why didn't anybody else do that? Why did only Yehoshua set up? There were many students there that could have done it. And the answer is, yes, they could have. But they didn't want to because they felt it was beneath their honor. They felt it was beneath their dignity. They felt it was a little bit embarrassing for me to set up the chairs. I'm going to, move the tables and prepare for the shiur, for the class. That's the janitor's job. I'm a big rabbi. I'm a big student. I'm a big person. I'm important. It's beneath my dignity to have to set up and to waste my time with these little things. When it's set up, call me. I'll come. It's embarrassing for me you're gonna ask me. It's serious. Their ego got to them. You understand? They allowed their ego. They allowed a little bit of kavod, and because of that, they had the self-respect too much beneath my dignity. They were embarrassed. Let the smaller people do it. That's what they said. That was their argument. But Yehoshua didn't care. I don't mind. If this is what needs to be done, then so be it. Whatever will allow the Torah of God and Moshe to be absorbed by the people. If it means setting up the chairs, if it means taking off my jacket and rolling up my sleeves and moving the chairs, then so be it. If it means getting into a car, driving to pick things up, to deliver it, then so be it. I'll do whatever is necessary to promote Torah. What about your honor? I don't care about my honor. Yehoshua worked on his humility. He was very humble. Something needs to be done. I'm going to do it. Our rabbi said it best. B'makom she'en ish, hishtadel lihiyot ish. In a place that there's no leaders, you be a leader. There's no one to do it. You get up, get down and dirty, and do the job. And that's what Yehoshua did. Yehoshua didn't wait for someone to make it to make it work, to make it happen. He got involved. That's a leader. God says, you I want to lead the Jewish people. And if that's the case, the elders look at Joshua and they're asking themselves, why did he get picked? Why not us? Because he didn't care about the embarrassment. He allowed himself to get belittled for the sake of Torah, for the sake of the community. We were too stuck on our pride. We cared about the embarrassment. It's embarrassing. I can't do it. It's embarrassing. They realized 30 years later, woe to that embarrassment that we felt then, because that embarrassment cost us the leadership. Because of that shame that we were feeling, we lose out now on becoming the leaders. So the embarrassment that they're referring to is the embarrassment that they felt for the last 50 years because they felt they were too important. They felt they were too chashuv. They felt that it was way beneath their honor to have to do small things. I'm better than that. This is the interpretation of the Chidah. I said last night at the Arayat of Rabbi Lankry that Rabbi Lankry was somebody that understood this message. Something needs to be done, then do it. Don't wait for other people to do it. Well, it's embarrassing. It's beneath your honor. It doesn't matter. He didn't care about honor. His entire life was about serving community. This is what needs to be done and I'll do it. He sold etrogim for many, many years. He got in, we went to Morocco. He got the etrogim. The Arabs, they don't know that if it's cleaner, it's more expensive. They charge him the same for everything. And he did it for many, many years. When I got married into the family, I sold etrogim in the beginning. When I was still in Kolel, I had to make ends meet. And I went to him and I asked him, they told me, you married Rabbi Lankry? He's the king of etrogim. So I called him up. He drove me around. He told me where to go, where to buy the lulav from, the etrog, this guy, that guy, right? Everyone a different thing. I asked him, why don't you sell it? Why'd you stop? His answer was very simple. There's other people today to do it. Back then I was needed, so I did it. Now there's, thank God, other people. I don't need to do it anymore. He was the first bookstore, Judaica store, before Eichler's, before Mikor, everything. He was the first Judaica store in Flatbush. Why'd you shut it down? Baruch Hashem, there are other people. I had to serve the community. They needed a bookstore, so I opened it. Now there's other bookstores. I'm not needed. B'makom she'eni, he understood the message. He understood when there's someone that needs to step up, he stood up. You know, when COVID hit, the Chevra Kadisha members, they were afraid. They were afraid to get contaminated. Many deaths because of COVID, and they weren't sure if you could still catch it after the death. They didn't want to go near the bodies. There was very few people willing. Rabbi Lankry went out helping the families, burying the people. My wife's grandma sends a voice note to the family chat, crying. He don't listen. He's going out. He checks every single box of every high-risk category. Tell him to come back. He won't listen. They need me here. There's no one here to do it. He was a man on a mission. He was a soldier to Hashem. We were at war, and if he was a casualty, then so be it. But at least he knew that he did his job. He beat the odds, by the way. He got corona a year later when all the cases were mild. But that's what he was. He was a Yehoshua ben Nun. They need to set up the chairs. I'll set it up. But you're a big rabbi. Doesn't matter about rabbi. Hashem's the only one that has the right to be proud. Okay, Hashem's the only one that should have pride. No one else should have pride. Hashem is Geut Lavesh. God wears the clothing of honor. And there are many, many more stories over here. I'll just share with you one more. He was in Deal last summer on Shabbat. Sunday morning, I wake up, I see him putting on his clothes. Where are you going? Did someone die? That's usually the answer. Someone died. He says, no, thank God, no one died. Where are you going? Going to Brooklyn. Why are you going to Brooklyn? You ready for this? Just in case. Just in case. I need to be local. What are you talking about, just in case? What about, Grandpa, people die here in Deal. Just in case here, maybe. Maybe stay, just in case someone dies in Deal. Here, there's other people that will do it. Over there, there's no one. B'makom she'enish. There's no one there. I gotta go. I gotta be there. Giving up his entire Sunday. His entire day of fun with the family, with the grandkids. Just to be there, just in case, for the community. This was Yehoshua ben Nun. This is why he was chosen to be a leader. This was our great Rabbi Lankry. He will be very, very missed. We should be zocheh to emulate these great people, to understand that the greatest pride is to give up of ourselves for Hashem, for the Torah. The more we belittle ourselves for God and for His people, the greater honor we will receive ultimately. This is the face of Yehoshua, the face of Moshe. We should be zocheh to emulate both. We'll stop over here, wishing everybody a Shabbat Shalom. Bye-bye.